So moving on from our last video where we were factorizing terms, okay, or finding the highest common factor between two terms, we're going to utilize that skill to factorize expressions. Now, I don't really like the term factorization. It has really negative connotations and it just seems hard and overbearing. So we're not going to use that. We're going to use the term to put brackets in. You remember from when we were expanding expressions, we were removing the brackets. All I'm going to teach you how to do now is put those brackets back in. So, to put brackets in. Looking at the first expression, I would like to put some brackets into this expression. Now, the first thing that I need to be able to do is find the common factor between these two terms. Okay, much like we did before. Now, you should the highest common term. Now, this one's relatively easy, okay, but like what we did before. Okay, let's write it out. So 2 and 6. So the two factors of 2 are 1 and 2. Of 6, it's 1, 2, 3, and 6. So we can clearly see the highest common factor is 2. Now, these do not share a pronumeral in common. Therefore, the highest common factor between these two terms is simply 2. Now, what we do with this highest common factor is we're going to put that outside of the bracket. So we've got a highest common factor. We can now put in a bracket. Ask yourself, how do I go from 2 to 2x? Okay, I would put an x here. So 2 times something equals 2x. The missing factor here, okay, is x. So 2 times x equals 2x. So we got that part right. Now, how do I go from 2 to 6? So 2 times something equals 6. Okay, the other way you can look at it, 6 divided by 2 equals 3. So I'm going to write positive 3. Okay, and there I have it. I've put some brackets into this expression. Now let's double check that I've got this right. Let's expand these back out. Times times. So 2x, okay, 2 times 3 equals 6. Or the numbers should say negative 7. So 1 and 7. So 1, 7, negative 1, negative 7. Okay, so these are all factors. So we're trying to find the largest common factor. So that in this case is 7. So we're going to write that there. Okay, now how do I go from, what do I need to times 7 by to equal itself? Okay, I need to put 1. Okay, 7 times 1 equals 7. Now what do I need to put into, or times 7 by to get negative 7y? So another way we can kind of write that out to visualize it, times something equals negative 7y. Now the two factors that we need to put in to this is the negative and the y. So if I put those there, 7 times negative y equals negative 7y. So what would go here is the negative y. Okay, because all I need to do is times, and remember this is really saying negative 1y. Okay, so you just got to think, what do I times this the high common factor by to equal this term of negative 7y? Now if I expand that out, so 7 times 1 is 7. 7 times negative y, okay, or 7 times negative 1y, okay, we know that that indicates a negative 1, equals negative 7y. Okay, so we have successfully put the brackets into this expression. Let's have a look at this one. So 3 and 5. Now the common factors of 3 are 1 and 3, and of 5 are 1 and 5. They're both prime numbers. So there is no number that's the highest common factor. So we can't write one down. We have to move on to our next step where we have a look at the pronumerals. Is there a pronumeral that is shared or is the same between these two terms? If we have a look, it is B. Okay, so that is going to be our highest common factor because it's our only factor between these two terms. So I'm going to write out the highest common factor and then I'm going to put the bracket. How do we go from B to 3AB? Okay, very similar. We can write this out like this, and I'm hoping you guys are going to start to see kind of the pattern. Now we've already factored in the B here. What we haven't got is the 3 and the A. So I need to times the 3 and the A by B to equal 3AB. Okay, now how do I go from B to negative 5B? So let's write B times something equals negative 5B. Again, what we don't have is that negative 5. So I'm going to write negative 5 like that. Okay, now I expand this out to double check. 3AB minus 5B. So these two match, which means that the brackets have been successfully put in. Now again, okay, we've only got one number given to us, which means that we can't have, very similar to the last one, we can't have a number that's the highest common factor. Okay, so we can't write one down. Moving on to the next step. We need to ask ourselves which number or which pronumeral is shared between, okay, the two terms. If we have a look at here, we've got r to the power of 2 and we've got r. Now the common pronumeral between those two pronumerals is r. So I'm going to write this. Okay, so put a bracket. Now, how do I go from r to r squared? Well, I simply need to put an r there so it's timesing it by itself. Plus, how do I go from r to 7rs? I need to put 7s. Now down here, I'm just going to show you kind of the same one. Okay, but it's going to be slightly different. Now, we've got r to the power of 2 plus 7r to the power of 4s. What is the common factor, okay, or the common pronumeral between here? Well, we've got r times r, and down here we've got r times r times r times r. Now, if you notice, this is 1 over here. We've got 2 r's timesing it by itself over here. So if we actually have a look, okay, r squared is our highest common factor. So I would write r squared like this. Okay, how do I go from r squared to r squared? I times it by 1 plus 7, okay, r to the power of 2 s. Okay, because r to the power of 2 times r to the power of 2, okay, I times them together, okay, to get 4, okay, like our index laws said. So you've just got to be careful. So you find the lowest common number of pronumerals between the two sides. So in this case it was 2, okay, because I've only got 2 over to the left side. I can make 2 up with the right side, therefore my highest common factor can only be r squared, okay, r to the power of 2. So it's just a little trick that you have to be aware of. Now we're going to deal with negatives. Whenever you have a negative, okay, it's really, really important to remember, okay, that you include the negative sign in the factor, okay? So basically what we need to be able to do initially, okay, negative 5, negative 10. Okay, now we know the highest common factor has to be a negative number. Okay, so what's the highest common factor between these two? So negative 1, negative 2. Now I'm not bothering with the positives. Oops, not 2. Negative 5. Okay, I'm not bothering with the positives because I know that this has a negative, which means that it has to be a negative in the highest common factor. So -1, -2, -5, -10. Okay, now the highest common factor is -5. Let's stick in a bracket. How do I go from -5 to -5x? Okay, put an x there. How do I go from -5 to -10? Now this is a little bit of a trick. Well, times something equals -10. Now if I times a negative and a negative together, I know that I'm going to get a positive 10. Okay, so therefore it must be positive 2. Okay, as such. So I'm going to write positive 2 like that. So if I expand this out, -5x equals -5 times x equals -5x. If I -5 times by positive 2 equals -10. Exactly the same trick over here. Okay, and 21. Okay, so let's have a look. 1, -1, -3, and -9. So if we have a look here, okay, 1, 3, 7, 21. Now the highest factor is 3, and because there is a negative sign in there, okay, the highest common factor has to be -3. Put in some brackets. How do you go from -3 to -9n? Well, I need to times it by a 3. So -3 times 3 equals -9n. Plus, how do I go from a -3 to a positive 21? -3 minus 7. Okay, so I'm timesing two negatives together to get my positive, and 3 times 7 equals 21. So you've just got to be very careful about this sign. Okay, very, very careful about this. Coming down here, okay, now we've got no numbers here. That's okay. We've got a negative h here, and we've actually got a negative h over here. Okay, this negative is associated with the h as well. So my highest common factor has to be -h. Put in some brackets. How do I go from -h to -hg? I simply put a g there. Okay, how do I go from a -h to a -h? I need to put +1. Why is it a positive? Because if I times it by a negative, this end result would be a positive, which we can clearly see that it is not. So it's +1. Coming down here, okay, to our very last question. Now, we've got -n plus 2n squared. Now we know that n is going to be some type of our highest common factor. We need to remember our rule. We've got a negative sign here. Therefore, that needs to go into our highest common factor. So it's -n. Now, how do I go from -n to this term here? I simply put an m. -n times m equals -mn. Now, how do I go from a negative, okay, to a positive? Okay, so I've got a negative here. I need to turn it into a positive somehow. I'm going to put a negative sign because a negative times a negative equals a positive. How do I get this squared? I need to times it by itself, like so. And again, I've successfully put the brackets into the expression.